We're in the final stretch of the 2014 election cycle with only a few days to go. The big prize, of course, is the U.S. Senate, and the outcome at this point is highly uncertain. Will Republicans take control? And if so, what is their margin of victory likely to be? With polls in many key contests extremely close, what is likely to happen in the hottest contests? Coming up next, we'll hear from Henry Olsen, who will break down what's happening in the closest races around the country. Today there are a large number of Senate contests, by some counts as many as 10 races up for grabs. The polls are seesawing back and forth in a very narrow range. What should we be looking at in the most competitive Senate contests? With us to talk about these races is Henry Olsen, a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center and a regular participant in AEI's Election Watch event series. Henry, which Senate contests are you watching most closely?
Well, the first one I'm looking at is Colorado. That's very close. It was a state that was carried by President Obama very narrowly, and the polls show a very close race between Republican Cory Gardner and first-time incumbent Democratic Senator Mark Udall. The polls overall suggest a Gardner victory, but if you look at underneath the crosstabs, they have worrying signs for both candidates. The real question is how many whites and how many Hispanics will turn out, because their opinions are so different. The different turnout ratio will likely swing the race.
Now tell me about the Hispanic vote in Colorado. It's one of the states where we should be paying most attention to that vote.
That's right. It's got the largest share of Hispanics as a portion of the adult population of any of the Senate states that are up at 14%. It's a share that's been going up in actual elections over the last few years from 11% to 14% in the 2012 race, and it goes overwhelmingly Democratic, that it goes between 70 and 77% Democratic in the past. The larger that vote is, unless Gardner can break into it, the more likely it is Mark Udall's going to win.
So your bottom line?
My bottom line is trust but verify. The polls suggest a narrow Gardner win, but it would not surprise me at all if Udall were to break it out. It'll be a 1 to 1.5 point victory margin in either direction.
Tell us about the second race you're following most closely.
Iowa is the next race that I'm looking at, in part because it's very much like Colorado in terms of its national implications, a swing state that President Obama carried by nearly identical margins, but it's demographically a world of difference. There's virtually no non-white population, depending on the year. You see between 91 and 93% are white, but they're very different types of whites, that they tend to be non-college educated whites. They tend to be large percentages of Catholics and non-evangelicals, non-English in terms of their white ethnicity, and that's been a difficult nut for the Republicans to crack in the last decade. Republican Joni Ernst seems to have a narrow but continued lead, and it suggests that that might be a Republican pickup.
She was a surprise candidate, wasn't she?
She was. I mean, she was a little-known state senator, and she burst onto the scene in what was admittedly before her a weak Republican primary field, with a super ad building on her background as a pig farmer.
It's a mess. Dirty, noisy, and it stinks. Not this lot. I'm talking about the one in Washington.
And that was shot her to the front of the pack, and she really has not let a hold of Iowans' imagination ever since.
Bottom line on that race?
Bottom line on that race, Ernst by 3.
Wow, very specific prediction. Now let's move on to the next race you're watching most closely.
The next race that I'm looking at is New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a race where incumbent Senator Jeanne Shaheen remains popular, but it's a Republican year. It's a state that is evenly balanced. Again, a swing state that Obama carried by about 5 points. Former Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown has moved into the state. He's gaining fast in the polls. I think she'll hold on, but that could be your sleeper upset on election night.
I think it may be a sleeper. Everybody's watching that one very closely. Is the carpetbagger image hurting Brown?
I think it did initially, but he seems to have put that behind him. Most reports this week suggest that he's performing very well in debates. He's performing very well in person. The sort of charisma that helped him break through a Democratic state like Massachusetts seems to be winning over New Hampshire voters as well.
I'd like to hear your thoughts about Kentucky.
Kentucky is a race that is proof that a longtime incumbent who does not fall asleep at the switch is very hard to defeat. Mitch McConnell knew he was unpopular among Republicans and tacked to the right and nuked his Tea Party primary challenger with heavy advertising early on to win a very convincing victory. Then he started behind to his Democratic challenger, Allison Lundgren Grimes, and went on the offensive against her very quickly. He's recently loaned himself $1.8 million. Since the polls generally have him ahead by single digits, that's probably more an insurance measure than an indication he thinks he's in trouble. But Mitch McConnell has had a will to win since he unseated Dee Huddleston in 1984, and he's not going to lose this one.
Absolutely, and it's been an almost picture-perfect campaign. So your final count for the Republicans, what's the range you're looking at?
The range I'm looking at is I think the Republicans will win control of the Senate. I'd be shocked if they didn't, but I think we're looking at between +6 and +9. My best guess is +7, but if Colorado goes Udall's way, I think we're looking at +6.
Thank you very much, Henry Olsen.
Thank you, Karlyn.
Thanks for watching. For the breakdown on all the midterm election results, please join us live on November 6th at noon for AEI's post-election wrap-up event. Subscribe to our channel to watch it live. See you then.